President Trump has to nationalize the election. You got to put not just, I think, ICE, you got to call up the 82nd and the 101st Airborne on the Insurrection Act. You got to get around every poll and make sure only people with IDs, people are actually registered to vote, and people that are United States citizens vote in this election. Full stop. We will not accept anything less.
Whoa. I mean, yikes. Okay. I mean, the music does it, don't you think? I mean, do you think he's going for a Hitler vibe? I mean, one has to wonder, but that's, of course, Steve Bannon not long ago. Talk about nationalizing using the Insurrection Act to surround the polls. I mean, look, the saying right now, of course, is they're saying the quiet part out loud. There's no quiet part, folks, okay? They're telling us they want to steal the election. They know they're going to lose. The midterms are up. The polls have never been worse. Even voters who don't even pay attention to what the hell's going on in this country right now have turned on Trump. The Republicans are freaking the F out. But don't worry, gas is cheap. No. We decided to have a freaking war and ruin that too. So the panic isn't. So while a lot of folks right now are talking about Iran, a lot of folks right now are talking about all the things going on in the economy. And you and I, we've talked about those things here on Democracy. But the show is called On Democracy. And the thing about our democracy is the right to vote. And believe it or not, while we're all paying attention to wars and economic collapse, they are going to steal this election if it kills them, right? Or kills us. And that's the thing about guys like Steve Bannon. They're willing to kill us to steal the election and stay in power. And you don't have to look far for them to tell you what they're doing, okay? Look, the fact is they want to get ICE to the polls. Here's Steve again.
One question. I want the mainstream media's head to blow up today. We can use what's happening with these ICE helping out at the airports. We can use this as a test run, as a test case to really perfect ICE's involvement in the 2026 midterm election, sir?
Yeah, I think we should have ICE agents at the polling places, because if you're an illegal alien, you can't vote, right? It's against the law. It's a federal crime for you to vote in federal elections. And so if you're an American citizen, you should be happy that ICE is there, because you're not going to have illegal aliens canceling out your vote.
It's already illegal, okay? They keep saying it. It is illegal. Here, I want to show you this clip too. Remember when it was cute that the Department of Justice didn't participate in politics? Like it was illegal for that. It was just immoral and inappropriate that the Department of Justice, any members of the Department of Justice participated in political events. I mean, it was a big scandal when former President Bush ran into the then AG on the tarmac at the airport and said hello. No, this is the deputy AG of the United States of America at the CPAC convention, the bloodthirsty conservative convention, just yesterday.
Like, why is there objection to sending ICE officers to polling places? Illegals can't vote.
Right. Illegals can't vote. It's already illegal. Okay, that's the damn point. And by the way, you're going to love this part. There's actual federal codes that say it's illegal. Okay, but it's illegal for you to put officer at the, it is against 18 U.S. code saying you cannot have federal armed officers at the polls unless there's an armed threat to the election. Period. It's codified. Here's the Brennan Center, a little clip from the Brennan Center. Amazing people just discussing this a couple weeks ago.
Surround the polls. You remember he said that a few weeks ago. That might be fun for his podcast, but it's illegal and can't happen.
It is illegal, and it would also violate laws prohibiting interference in elections and prohibiting intimidation of voters. So there really are a whole bunch of different federal laws that would run afoul of.
There's the Section 11 of the Voting Rights Act, which is still in existence as of the taping of this podcast, and that section is not being challenged.
That section is not being challenged, and there were also criminal provisions that would actually make it a crime in addition to that for intimidating voters or attempting to interfere in a federal election.
And laws that are state laws and local laws too, not just federal laws. And anybody who's given the instruction to go interfere in an election has to really understand there would be legal consequences to doing that kind of thing.
Yeah, civil and potential criminal consequences for doing that kind of thing.
Civil and potential criminal. Yeah, it is already illegal for illegals to vote, and it is also very illegal to have armed federal agents at the polls, period. And the reason because is obvious, because we do not want voter intimidation. It's clear voter intimidation. They want to scare you from voting. And that's their goal here, folks, is to scare you from voting. But don't worry, they're trying to fix that too. They're going to try and pass the SAVE Act, make it harder for you to vote, make it almost impossible. You have to prove you're a citizen to even register to vote. And no, your real ID ain't good enough. Last clip.
Republicans have to win this one, he said. We'll never lose a race for 50 years. And this isn't about political influence with comments like that from the head of the Republican Party? You may think he's thinking about some dim and distant future, perhaps, that this effort on the floor of the Senate right now to throw the election to the Republican Party isn't immediate. Whoops, there he goes. It will guarantee the midterms. Guy says the quiet part out loud. I'll give him that. He tells Republicans, you're going to win the midterms at levels that you can't even believe. How would you win the midterms at levels that you can't even believe? Well, you probably can't believe that you'd win the midterms based on current polling, as Americans reject the wars, the spending, the waste, the corruption, the cost increases. You can't even believe it unless you get this bill.
Yeah, Trump is saying it. He wants this bill to pass. He wants the SAVE Act to pass so that they can win elections. And look, folks, it's not because of illegals or any of that really ridiculous shit. It's a very simple reason they want to save it. Why? Because the number one champion of the bill is telling you. Here's Mike Lee. Polls, the bottom tweet is showing polls that actually Democrats are now favorites to win control of the Senate. But don't worry, Mike Lee's got a plan. Let's turn this around. I mean, they're lying. They're not even lying to your face. They're telling you flat out the whole purpose of this bill. And they're saying the rest of it is, well, because the Democrats rely on illegal. Look, folks, they've tried to find that. They've worked their asses off trying to find this fake idea that there's illegal people voting. And the best case is like 10 cases. And the funniest thing is, since the last election, almost every case they've caught of voter fraud has been associated with Republicans trying to vote more for Trump, not anybody else. Look, it's just common sense. If you're here illegally, why on earth would you vote? If you're trying to fly under the radar and not get kicked out of the country, why on earth would you go to a place that requires you in 37 states to actually show an ID? Yeah, because most states have a voter ID law that works just fine right now. But that's not good enough for these guys in the Republican Party. They want more. They want more. It's always more. So I'm Fred Wellman. This is On Democracy with FP Wellman, your weekly dose of discussing our democracy. And I wanted to talk about the fact they're going to try to steal the election. And of course, that was the macro level. Let's bring it down to the micro level. I know a lot of folks have been watching the attempts by the Republicans to gerrymander in the middle of a decade to steal elections in various states. Obviously, it passed in Texas. Well, now the battleground's here in Missouri, and we're still fighting. Maybe people have moved on. You've been talking about Virginia, where they actually put it to a vote, and California, where they put it to a vote. Well, here in Missouri, we don't have to put it to a vote. So we're fighting tooth and nail. I'm thrilled to have a guest to talk about it again, Richard von Glahn, because a lot's happened. And the final battle is almost here. So let's get out the show. I'm Fred Wellman. This is On Democracy. Thank you for Midas Touch, all the Midas Touch family. We're here every Friday night. Make sure you like, share, repeat, all those things. Let's get out the show. Welcome. I am Fred Wellman. This is On Democracy FP Wellman right here on the Midas Touch Network. I'm thrilled to have Richard von Glahn with us today and talk about this discussion. Look, there's a lot of things going on, folks. We're trying to win an election. Let's get on. Let's welcome the guest in just a second. Here we go. Richard, welcome back to the show, man. It's great to see you again, man.
All right. Thanks for having me, Fred.
Oh, I appreciate it. So for those, I guess we'll start at the top. For those who may not know who you are, I forgot the intro because it's a Friday. You know? So Richard runs People Not Politicians here in Missouri. You're the executive director, right? You're fighting the battle against the mid-decade gerrymandered redistricting the Missouri legislature passed in a special session about 6 months ago right now. I guess it's been 7 months ago, where they cut out Emanuel Cleaver's 5th district of Missouri, split it up. They went from a 7-2 or 8-2 map trying to get a 9-1 map to give Trump one more vote, right? And you've been fighting this battle relentlessly. Can you give everybody kind of, let's start there for those who weren't familiar with you. How did you start this thing off? Explain, I guess we'll start at the top. Explain, how does Missouri, we have a ballot initiative thing, right? That we can actually turn down laws that our legislature passes, correct?
Yeah, for over a century, we've had what's called a citizen referendum process. It allows citizens to, when our legislature gets out of line, it allows citizens to exercise a veto of those things. It's a petition process. You have to gather over 100,000 signatures, but then a law gets suspended until we vote on it. We've done it 27 times over the last century. 24 of the time citizens have made the effort, the law has been rejected. Because sometimes, look, politicians just get out of line and do something that's not in the interest of the people of the state.
And of course, we have a supermajority here in Missouri, which means the Republicans, they can do whatever they want. They don't have to even have they don't have to have the Democrats show up. They can form a quorum all by themselves, which we're hoping to fix this fall. But however, right now, yeah, we've had to kind of check them because ultimate power can be a very dangerous thing for folks. So last fall, they had a special session at Donald Trump's behest, and of course, they passed a 9-1 map. You got to work right away, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, they passed this law on a Friday afternoon, and within about an hour and a half, we had the referendum filed with the Secretary of State, started printing petitions, and on Monday, we started having hundreds of people come through the doors, getting trained how to do it, and get out there. And we had an amazing success. I mean, like I said, we needed about 110,000 signatures. Over the next 90 days, we gathered 3 times that, over
Oh,
305,000 signatures, despite
wow.
some pretty aggressive tactics from the opposition. But so now we've got that in there, and it's very clear and it's very exciting. The people don't want this. But of course, in this spring, we've been engaged in what I call just a series of lawfare, where
Yeah.
you've seen the state attorney general and secretary of state really abuse the power of those offices and try to force this through against the established law in Missouri and
That's
our
what's been shocking to
constitutional
me as a
rights.
citizen. Yeah, I mean, as a citizen, just watching them just work so hard to fight us the people, and it's obvious when you have 300,000 people sign a petition, that's a message, and they don't seem to want to get the message, do they? So they've tried every trick in the book, knowing it's going to be on the ballot. The trick they love to pull here in Missouri, folks, is they'll create what they call the ballot language that goes on the actual ballot, what we vote on in November. They try to make it sound what it isn't, right? They did this the abortion when we passed the abortion amendment to stop it. They're going to, or they'll put what we call ballot candy, where it's something that's so obvious that it makes us, oh well, I don't want illegals to vote when it has nothing that's not already illegal, right? So I think you've had a couple of victories and a couple of challenges, right? So I guess the one victory, the ballot language, was one. They were trying to make it sound, they're trying to confuse us, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, the Secretary of State writes the ballot summary. He wrote something that described the previous map, as a gerrymandered map that protects politicians, and that this thing would be the a better map that would make everything's more compact and would make it better for voters. And so we challenged that in court, and we won there. I mean, the judge found on 3 separate occasions the secretary, lied or misled voters with the ballot summary. And so we were able to get that challenged and cleaned up a little bit. We're still working through that legal case because I think there's still some more improvements we can get in the language. But it says something when you had a Republican judge
Yeah.
in Cole County, Missouri, say, yeah, the Secretary of State lied here and was trying to deceive voters.
Right, and that's significant because that is again once another that's the tactic. We saw that with the opening part of the show. Right now, and now of course, then the Missouri Supreme Court, which we do vote on our Supreme, they actually they had us lost because one of the other issues was, can they even do this? Right? I mean, the Constitution says that you shall conduct redistrict after a census, but unfortunately, the way it's worded, I think my friend Jason Rosenbaum calls it the Air Bud rule, right? Which is if for those familiar, that's been a running joke here in Missouri for a while, where if you remember the movie Air Bud, the rules didn't say a dog couldn't play basketball. So here they're saying, well, the Missouri Constitution doesn't say they can't just redistrict whenever they feel like it, right? And they actually agree with the Air Bud law, didn't they?
Yeah, this was something because this has never happened in Missouri. We've never
Oh,
seen the legislature try to engage in redistricting just at the whim of a whim of a president. And so, when they did it, we sort of challenged it because we said our Constitution says when there is new data from the census, then you shall redistrict. And so that was the question, as is that a limiting thing or is this air bud? Yeah, it doesn't say
right.
anything about that. We lost in a 4-3 decision there. Um, you know, I still sort of really question the logic of this because one thing that is established law is you really have to make sure that congressional districts have equal population. And if you
Right.
start redrawing boundaries and you don't know how people have moved over the last 5, 6 years, you're going to end up with districts that are unequal in representation. And so this is really going to harm Missourians. So it was a bad Supreme Court decision, but it doesn't change the fundamental point here, which is with a referendum, people are going to decide what happens to us, not politicians, not judges. We are the final arbiters of this dispute.
Right, and that's the real, and that takes us to the battle you're at now. I know. I mean, there's still lawsuits going on, right? I believe there's still lawsuits from ACLU. Our friend Mark Elias is on one of those, right? So before we get to the verification part of this, how many lawsuits are still clicking, Richard? I mean, I'm not. I not
Yeah,
gonna lie,
I
I've
mean,
lost track myself.
yeah,
I live here and I've lost track.
we still have 6 or 7 things out here
Wow.
that are floating around, and it's been frustrating because I think one thing that you've seen is um, our state office holders are really trying to slow walk resolution on these
That's what I was gonna
things.
say. This
They
is this
just
is a time game now, is it? They're trying to run the clock out. Another basketball reference. They're trying to run the clock out, aren't they? Because
yeah,
we know what they try to pull is they'll just say, "Well, oh sure, we lost in court, but well, too late. We just had to go with it, right?" Is that what
yeah,
they're trying to do now? You think? Yeah.
yeah. I think absolutely. They have already been arguing this legal theory called the Purcell Doctrine that just says, oh, yeah, maybe the map's illegal, but it's too late to change now. So, we're just going to do it and we'll come back around to fixing it at another time.
Of course. Once we've gotten rid of one of the congressmen that Donald Trump personally wanted to get rid of, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess I mean, so I guess the final battle is yours, right? The ballot, the actual signature verification is complete. Where are you at in your portion of this whole thing? Getting those signatures on there, pausing this law.
Yeah. I mean, the great news that came from Missouri this week is as of Monday, the documents from the Secretary of State's office showed that we have enough, verified signatures to to hit the threshold that we needed. We knew this day was coming, so did
Right.
they. When we turned in 305,000 signatures, this was inevitable. But it's great that it's here. And what it means is the map must be suspended at that point. And until we vote on it, it can't go into effect. And I've got a feeling, based on how people interacted us when we were gathering signatures, nobody asked, "Are you a Democrat?" We had Democrats, independents, Republicans saying, "Yeah, I want to be able to pick my politicians. I don't want my politicians picking me."
Right.
Because fundamentally, you want a system, all voters want a system where there's political accountability. Politicians legislate how they're going to, and then they have to come back and face their voters and say, did I do a good job or did I do a bad job? And that's what voters want, and that's not a partisan thing. And so I think when we get this on the ballot, we're going to go out and win. So
And that
people will be voting no
right.
on the
No.
politicians gerrymander. Yeah, it'll
Well,
be a
it's
no
outrageous.
vote.
I mean, it is outrageous what they tried to pull. I mean, it is ridiculous. And it shocks me to this day that our Republican friends still haven't figured out that people are tired of this stuff. I mean, that look what happened in California, look what happened in Virginia. When you do put it to the vote, they overwhelmingly stop this. They do not want somebody from Washington, D.C. reaching out, telling us that we're going to pick we're going to move people around so we can have our politicians. It's so funny how often, as I talk to people here in my home district, they say, well, I'm not sure if I'm in your district or this district or that district. I'm like, well, let's be honest, if the lines mattered, they wouldn't keep changing. The whole
Yeah.
goal is to stay in power, you know. So, you know,
Yeah.
let's not bog down. I mean, it'll matter in November when you go to vote, but right now, let's just worry about what's happening around here, right? And what's happening around here in Missouri is a very, very nefarious mission to try and shape the actual result of the election long before we cast a ballot, right? And so, how do you feel about your battle? I mean, you're an optimistic guy. What's next for you?
Yeah, I mean, I feel good about this. You know, obviously it gets frustrating when we get in court and things slow down. But you know, um people are ready to go. People are fired up. They know cheating for what it is. They're frustrated by it. And so you know, as soon as we get certified here, we'll get moving, we'll get on the phones, we'll get on the doors, you know, keep talking to
Yep.
more people. And I expect we're going to see a strong victory here in Missouri and rejection. And I think it's important when a state like Missouri, a quote unquote red state,
Right.
you know, rejects these sorts of tactics. That's really critical for the state and health of our democracy, not just here, but across the country.
Yeah. It feels like they're overplaying their hand, isn't it? I mean, that's the impression I got. You were out there talking to folks. A lot of, because you're right, it has been Republicans too, who are saying, you know, you know, I know a lot of Republicans. I worked for Republicans. I mean, they are fiercely independent people, and having politicians in the Capitol jam their ideas down their throats like this it's not natural for anybody, right? So, I mean, do you think? I guess the next question is, what's our timeline, and when should we start breathing easier?
Yeah. So, you know, the timeline is unfortunately, we're probably not really going to know the final resolution about this until May,
Wow.
which is kind of the same thing. I mean, the last time we did redistricting and politicians were in charge of it, they took until May, which is frustrating for people because our candidate filing actually closes next week. And people would
Yeah.
think, well, don't we need to have resolution? And I said, well, I'd like to have resolution, but if the state's going to drag things out, they're going to drag things out. What's clear right now is I think we're going to have a vote on this, whether or not the state is going to try to force to have an illegal election first, and then we say, you know, maybe we'll get rid of this map after 2026. But we're doing the work to make sure that we're not ever going to have an illegal election in Missouri. We're going to make sure that nothing changes without our approval, or in this case, rejection when we vote
Yeah.
no.
And boy, are we hearing on the streets that people are fed up with the Republican supermajority at this point. I mean, I
Yeah.
think they've known. I've heard for 2 years now that Republican senators and Republican state reps are saying, we know this is our last gasp as a supermajority. That they know the tide has turned against them because of these which we see for those of
Yeah.
us who live here. You see things like trying to get rid of the income tax, frantically trying to get rid of the income tax, or frantically trying to change the Constitution. There is sort of an air of desperation, isn't there? And they know their time's up. They know they overplayed their hand on this one, don't they?
100%. And I think, you know, you've got a party that uh, is doing everything that they can to wield governing power as a minority party. And that's where you see these sort of structural changes, these gerrymanders, these, you know, voter ID laws, these things. It's just like, well, we're not going to win if everyone, you know, gets an equal voice and an equal shot. So, you know, but you've got some of them that are perfectly happy saying, well, you know, we're going to be a minority party and we're just going to manipulate and cheat.
Yep. Well, we're not big fans of that here nor anywhere. So I
No.
appreciate your efforts. But I guess the most important question I asked before I let go, I know we've gone over your
Yep.
time. Where can people find you to help? And we've got a great audience here on Midas Touch. Is there help you need right now, Richard?
Yeah, people can always find us at peoplenotpoliticiansmo.org. That's where you can follow along a little bit of like what's happening in Missouri. Like you said, there's a lot of legal cases, there's a lot of things going on. We try to keep everybody up to speed there. You know, you can join our newsletter to be able to see what's happening there. You know, the biggest thing, what's the most frustrating here as a Missouri taxpayer is we actually have a lot of litigation expenses. We've had to do a lot of things of all these court cases. And, you know, what's so maddening here is, of course, the other side of this, our unelected Attorney General, Catherine Hanaway, you know, she never won, she got appointed. Um, you know, she's able to use taxpayer dollars to
Yeah.
litigate the unconstitutional power grab against us. And that's really frustrating, but we need to be able to meet that head on. So, you know, $5, $10 contribution people can help. We really appreciate it. We're on Act Blue, or again, you find us at peoplenotpoliticiansmo.org.
Perfect. Richard, man, thanks for taking time this morning. It was the last minute. So I love behind the scenes. My guest that we were having canceled at, I believe, 10 p.m. last night. I texted Richard, and here we are the next morning. That is how we do it, right?
So, fortunately, I was on a plane. Otherwise, I might have been asleep. But
that worked out perfect. All right. Well, I would have hunted. I would have knocked on your door. So, Richard, thanks, man. Hey, keep up the fight, brother. We appreciate you. I can't keep we do as a Missouri citizen, and of course, that other job I'm doing. I really do appreciate you doing this fight for us. It's a brave thing, and it matters. So thanks, brother.
Yeah, appreciate it, Fred. Thanks
for joining us.
Day.
See you soon. That's the fight, folks. So you heard it, right? This is what they're doing. You saw the intro. They want to have armed federal agents at the polls. They want Steve Bannon wants actual soldiers at the polls. Meanwhile, they're frantically trying to pass the SAVE Act, which is this complete misnomer of what's going on. It's not true at all. It's not how any of this works, and they're trying to pass these laws against us. And meanwhile, we're out here fighting the good fight, trying to save our country. And the fact is, it is illegal to have armed. I actually went back and I actually looked it up while we were talking. It's 18 USC 592 prohibits any federal officer, military or civil, from stationing or keeping troops or armed men at any polling place, except for necessary defense against armed enemies. Violations are punishable by fines and up to 5 years in prison, with the intent of ensuring free, uninterrupted elections without intimidation. And look, folks, when people come at you with this, when they say, "What are you worried about? Why are you okay with illegals voting?" Because they're not voting. It's already illegal to do that. There are already things in place to prevent that. The fact is, they want to intimidate you. They want anyone who's because here's what's going to happen, folks. You know what's going to happen. There's going to be some masked asshole at the poll with an M4 strapped across his chest and body armor because they act like they're in combat. And anyone of color, anyone who happens to speak to their neighbor in the line with an accent is going to be pulled out of line. Because what they're going to do, folks, let's look how they've done it in the streets of Minnesota and elsewhere. They're not going to just say, "Hey, can I see your ID real quick?" "Oh, okay, you're legal. Thanks," and put it away. No, they're going to pull you out of line. And of course, they're going to have a van waiting. And anyone who seems like they might be illegal, they're going to put them in a van and take them to headquarters to interview. That's what they're going to do. Don't be fooled by this bullshit they're trying to sell you. Oh, it's just going to be guys guarding it. No, that's not what they're saying at all. You're going to have masked agents of the government pulling anyone who looks like they may be foreign out of the long lines. Imagine how it is on a voting day. You're standing in line for hours. And they're going to go down that line looking at you. How would you feel? Any human being would feel standing in line, minding your own business when armed, masked men approach you. It is voter intimidation. We won't stand for it. We won't allow it to happen. Use your voice. Don't let these fools fool anyone. We must use our voices and fight this. It is illegal. Okay, that's before we talk about USC 593, which prohibits armed forces from interfering with voting or election officer duties. USC 594 criminalizes intimidation of voters. 245 addresses interference with voting, regardless of whether the offender is acting under a color of law. Believe it or not, even if they say this is what they're doing is legal, there's actually a law that says this is illegal. Okay, voting is supposed to be easy, it's supposed to be convenient, it's supposed to be free and open. And what they're trying to do is limit that. And they're going to gaslight us till we're blue in the face to stop it. And we must not allow it. So I really appreciate people like Richard and the folks in his team that have done all that work. I appreciate people like Sheldon Whitehouse is up there fighting the good fight on Capitol Hill. We have got to support those folks. I know there's so much on our minds right now. There's the war in Iran. I think about it all the time. It's been probably the reason I've been such a salty character around for the people who love me. I see what's happening. Now they're talking about 10,000 troops going to Iran. I know what's happening. You know what's happening. But right now, imagine how bad it's going to be if this son of a gun, Donald Trump, continues in office for another 2 years with no checks on his power whatsoever because the Republican doormat Congress doesn't do a damn thing. The audacity of them to talk about corruption while every time Trump makes an announcement about the Iran war on Truth Social, oddly, there's a flurry of trades around oil and other stocks moments before he does that. There's some corruption going on that's mind-boggling. Billions of dollars is being traded right before Donald Trump makes major national security announcements. That's treason, folks. They're conducting treason in office to profit off office. And what's the Republican doormat Congress talking about? Biden. Still, enough's enough. This is the path to victory. So I really want to take 1 week where we pull off and talk about this issue, talk about these issues that we're facing right now. It's important to me. It's important to you. I appreciate you. In the meantime, you can always find us here every Friday night at 7 p.m. right here on Eastern on My Touchdown. We're live as a live stream. Tell your friends, join us in the live stream, make your comments. Love to talk to you as much as I can. You know, I enjoy it. And in the meantime, to keep up with all the other work we're doing, it's fpwellman.substack.com. Go to fpwellman.substack.com. I'm Fred Wellman. This is On Democracy. I will see you next week. Thanks for being a part of the Midas Mighty. Keep up the fight, folks. We're not done yet.